Hey, Sateria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Of course, very excited to have you on the show. You have a great virtual background.
Thank you. I try. I switch it up from time to time, but this is the look for today. Yeah.
I have a friend, Alice, who does FemTech work at McKinsey, and she was on maternity leave for a bunch of this year. And she said it was crazy for her to come back to work and see how everyone's Zoom game just like totally advanced. She was like, I need to get a new camera. I need a microphone. Like people's
Exactly.
Zoom game is like
Yeah.
really good now.
First, I ordered a microphone, then I ordered the light, and then I started playing with the background. She's absolutely right on.
Right? Like if
Yeah.
anybody is still not having a virtual background, is using your regular camera and it's below your nose, something's wrong. You got to step it up.
I agree.
Well, Sateria, I am so excited to chat with you today. You have done a lot of fantastic work for women. And so
Mhm.
I really want to get into your story, but let's start with your personal background. Where are you from? What did you study? What did you do? How did you end up here?
Oh wow, that's an interesting story. I'm a Baltimore girl, so I'm back in Maryland, but I was gone for a long time, and I actually studied architecture in college, which is not at all what I'm doing now. I think I think the creative juices have gone in many other directions, but I actually unfortunately started this organization, the Fibroid Foundation, from a negative experience that I had with a personal health challenge.
Mm.
And after my second of four fibroid surgeries, I started looking into the statistics behind uterine fibroids. And I was shocked to learn that up to 70% of women will be diagnosed with uterine fibroids by the age of 50 and 80% of women of color. And I just wondered why no one was screaming from the rooftops
Oh, yeah.
about this.
Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And I consider myself pretty good at researching and finding resources and physicians, and I couldn't find anyone to treat me.
Wow.
So I realized that there were many, many women who just kind of exhaled when I asked them, do you suffer from fibroids? And they were like, yes, I just wanted someone to talk to. Women really opened up. So
Mm-hmm.
then I thought, okay, there might be something here. So I started blogging my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of led me over the course of 10 years doing that and my full time job to start the organization.
Wow. And, for endometriosis, usually one of the biggest things is that it takes so many years to finally get a diagnosis. Is that the same for fibroids, that it's misdiagnosed or ignored, or is it quicker to diagnose, but then there's like just no support?
I think now it's quicker to diagnose for
Okay.
sure than
Uh-huh.
endo. But I do believe that women aren't often offered all treatment options.
They're just
Um,
told, like,
yeah,
yep,
they're told
here's what you have.
hysterectomy. They're told hysterectomy, and if they're severe, which is
Yeah.
completely unacceptable.
No, of course. I mean,
Mhm.
geez. And so, can you describe for our listeners, like, what would be the symptoms of fibroids, and like, also just as, and also sometimes I throw my listeners under the bus saying like, oh, can you explain this for them? It really is for me because I'm learning too. I'm also curious to know, like, so what are the symptoms, but also like, is this something that usually happens at a certain point in your life? Like, is it associated with like menopause or like your first period, or maybe not at all? Can you talk to us about that?
All great questions. So, uterine fibroids can have a whole host of symptoms. I often call them a chameleon because they display
Mhm.
very differently in all women. Some women could have 20 fibroids with no symptoms.
Wow.
Or you could be like me, who had three fibroids for a long time that weren't very large, that were wreaking havoc. So
Mm.
it varies greatly. But some of the telltale signs that there could be a problem are heavy menstrual bleeding, if you're having breakthrough bleeding between periods,
Mm.
if you're having pain, significant pain, or if you're fatigued from the bleeding, which means that you might be anemic. You could have leg pain or back pain or chills. So it varies greatly. And the best advice I think women can get is just know your body. And if anything changes, just make a note of it and share that with a physician whom you trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the best way to really stay on top of the symptoms of
Because
uterine fibroids.
we know our bodies best, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
I actually think about when you said that, I was thinking about my dogs. So, I'm their mother, right? I'm their
Mhm.
mother. And my, dog will look at me a certain way and I know exactly what he's thinking. He's
Mhm.
hungry, or he's got to go out, or he's this, or he's that, or there's a noise that's bothering him. And
Mhm.
it's like, friends are like, how did you know that? I'm like, I'm his mother. I could tell just the
Exactly.
twinge in his muscles a little bit, exactly what's happening. And so like, we got to do that for our own bodies too.
I think that's great. That's a great analogy because oftentimes the medical system can be intimidating for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say women are experts in their own body. So
Mm-hmm.
just have the confidence of knowing that you know more about your own body than anyone else. And,
Yes.
and hopefully that's empowering to be able to find the voice that you need
Yeah.
to ask for the support that you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of when women are diagnosed, we're learning that women are really developing uterine fibroids sometimes in their teens.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it becomes a bigger issue during the reproductive years.
Okay. Oh.
But we support women along the whole spectrum. So
Mm-hmm.
from teen, college age, through their 20s, 30s, 40s, and even into perimenopause, menopause, because sometimes at menopause, the fibroids will shrink and become a non issue, but that's not always the case.
Okay. And what is a fibroid?
A fibroid is a muscular tumor that is non cancerous. I want to say that again, it's non cancerous.
Mm-hmm.
And they are really hard. They've been compared to the consistency of a golf ball, and
Oh.
they could range in size from a pea or smaller to the size of a watermelon, which is mind
Wow.
blowing to think. Yeah, we have pictures of some of our community members that have had huge masses of
Wow.
fibroids removed.
Wow.
It's
And
unbelievable.
can fibroids happen on other muscles around the body?
No, it's
Oh.
either inside the uterine cavity,
Mm-hmm.
inside the uterine wall, or extending from the uterus on the outside.
Got it. Okay. I'm learning so much. So, heavy menstrual bleeding, pain, bleeding between your periods.
Hmm.
It's like this non-cancerous muscular tumor in the muscle of the uterus.
Correct.
Um, how does it get diagnosed? Is it like an ultrasound? Like, or how do you find that out?
You're really knowledgeable, Brittany. It's usually an ultrasound and a pelvic exam. And one of the things that we recommend oftentimes is that if you are diagnosed and you're being prepped for a procedure,
Mm-hmm.
an MRI is really the best way to really identify the exact location of each fibroid because
Mm-hmm.
each fibroid has its own blood supply. So the really knowledgeable surgeons will want to know where that blood supply is
Yeah.
before they start a procedure.
Yes. And so I heard you say earlier that, Black women have more fibroids, higher
Mhm.
rates of fibroids than Caucasian women. Do you, what else goes along with that besides that, like just being biologically shitty, like and unfair, but like, what are some other like consequences of that? We had done an episode on Black women's maternal health. And
Mhm.
one of the biggest issues is, racism in the healthcare system. The
Mhm.
doctors don't even know that they're doing it. But,
Mhm.
if you look at the statistics of women's health, like the black women, when they're giving birth, they're not treated as well, and they have consequences of that. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, where does race, society, and fibroids kind of interact? Do you have any insights on that?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up. There are significant health disparities.
Mm-hmm.
And we found through many of the research efforts that we've been involved in that different areas of the country, different pockets of certain cities, women who either don't have the access to care, or when they do have the access to care, they will experience those type of racially centered um, diagnoses or feedback,
Mm-hmm.
which is really scary and unfortunate in this day and age, but it does still happen. And the access to care is completely, it's a pivotal part of the treatment and diagnosis process. And for me, I was diagnosed at 26, immediately told to have a hysterectomy. And
Wow.
that is just crazy. The doctor didn't
Yeah.
ask me what my, childbearing goals were, what my, personal, anything about, what do you want for yourself? It was just like, well, you can have a hysterectomy to take care of it. And that was pretty much it.
And that has other consequences, like all the menopause consequences of like
Yeah.
osteoporosis and like
Yeah.
all the other.
Menopause,
Yeah,
it
it's
can
not even just
be,
about having babies. It's about
yeah,
like taking out a major organ that affects everything,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
You can have prolapse, which then would take you
Yeah.
from sanitary napkins to incontinence
Yeah.
protection. I mean, there's a whole host of things.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we have this conversation and that patients be involved in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because that changes the dynamics of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier when I mentioned an MRI, an MRI is often cost prohibitive to many women. In fact, a lot of the procedures to treat uterine fibroids are cost prohibitive. I
Yeah.
know some of my surgeries have one cost upwards of $50,000.
That
And
with insurance.
well, no, insurance covered the vast majority of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but still, if someone does not have health insurance, then it's just something, they often suffer.
Yeah.
And these are things that we really need to address and make sure that all women have access to care.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. And also too, that we really tackle our own preconceptions, whenever we interface with another person.
Mm-hmm.
We need to just become more adept at hearing them as a person
Mm-hmm.
and looking past skin color. That's
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah. And, I don't know why I have this paradigm in my mind. I always think about access to care is in like, can I physically get there? And then I often forget like access is the healthcare insurance piece too. And I think that it's an afterthought for me because most of my life I've been, I grew up under Obamacare being covered by my mom, and then I had a
Mhm.
career and now I'm in a, FemTech Focus is a new nonprofit venture I started earlier this year. I currently don't have health insurance. And so now I hear access to care. I think about somehow, I don't know why, but I think about driving to a doctor. Can I do that? But then I also think about, oh yeah, and how the hell am I going to pay for that? And when I think about fibroids, I've never had one. So I mean, maybe it feels like death, but when it comes down to when you look at the bills at the end of the month, I wonder if these women are like, I can't go into more debt over this, cramping, and women are supposed to cramp. Maybe I'm
Mhm.
being too sensitive. Is there also that feeling where women are like, they don't go to the doctor soon enough because they wait
Absolutely.
because they think like
Yeah.
they're just being weak or something?
I think there are many things. Women think that they should just suffer through the symptoms.
Uh-huh.
And also there's a fear of treatment, and there's a fear of talking about it. From, women are afraid that they'll be labeled or just ostracized. And in many cultures, outside of the United States, they are ostracized for heavy menstrual bleeding or not being able to conceive. And
Yeah.
so there, um, our goal is to, we've started a new hashtag, more than fibroids, because there's so much to discuss around the whole menstrual journey.
Yeah.
And there's so much information that needs to be shared
Yeah.
to make sure that women embrace their menstrual journey and know that they have the support that they need.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you started FemTech Focus and talk, you know, when you just shared about your own health insurance, you now have a platform to make a difference
Mm-hmm.
where that's concerned. So, you know, feel empowered because there's always a solution. I'm like, my mind's always spinning like, okay, there's a problem. Okay, how can we solve that? You
Yeah,
know?
how can we hack
But
it? How can I
yeah,
hack it? Yeah,
exactly.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I've hacked my healthcare insurance issue a little bit because my co-founder's a gynecologist, so I've definitely sent her
Mhm.
pictures of things and being like, should I be concerned? Or like, I feel
Mhm.
like this. So I have a little telehealth in my pocket.
There you
Um,
go.
so I'm on a birth control that lets me skip my period. Would that help if I had fibroids? Would that help my symptoms?
Birth control is definitely one of the treatment options.
Uh-huh.
If you have uterine fibroids. I was on birth control pills for a long time
Mm-hmm.
to manage the bleeding. And then my body broke through the birth control pills
Mm-hmm.
and I started bleeding anyway. So then I had to look at another form of treatment. But birth control pills are often prescribed to address some of the symptoms around uterine fibroids. And there are other medical therapies that are coming on the market now that will help to halt the bleeding for a period of time. And I think that that's beneficial because I really feel for the women who are diagnosed with fibroids, have never heard the word fibroid, and then have to quickly decide on a surgery because oftentimes they're in crisis. You know, they're bleeding
Mm-hmm.
heavily or severely anemic and they need to make decisions. And the more tools that we can provide them with to make them comfortable, to give them the luxury of time to be able to make better decisions for their care, I think overall is a win-win for all concerned.
Yeah. Is that what the Fibroid Foundation does?
Yeah, we education is our top platform.
Okay.
So providing that information to let women know what their options are, referring them to specialists. We also are pushing a fibroid bill in Congress, which I'm super excited
Oh my
about.
God, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
and what's even wilder is that our future VP is the sponsor in the Senate for the fibroid bill. So now we're waiting to see who will now carry that torch and take over now that she's assuming a new role. But Congresswoman Yvette Clarke sponsored it in the House, and Senator Kamala Harris sponsored the fibroid bill in the Senate. And I'm so pleased because I worked really hard to advocate for that legislation with many, many meetings on Capitol Hill. And it was really a gift of 2020 to see that legislation move forward despite the pandemic. So it will provide 4 years of funding for fibroid research at NIH, $30 million for each year. So we're going to start asking everyone to write letters to support that legislation and research. And it's just really, really promising. I'm super excited, as you can tell.
I mean, the listeners can't see this, but my face is like stuck in a giant smile. I am like, this is so cool. This is amazing. This is so important. I just this morning, literally every day though, I talk to founders that say, I need funding for my startup because we need to do research because we don't even have the data on the problem we're trying to solve. And I'm just like, this is not a venture capital funding issue. This is a government funding issue. We need the government to put NIH, NSF, HHMI, all the government entities with funding for science need to step up and put money into this so that scientists can research, publish papers so that innovators can take the published papers and say, oh, look it, this is technically what a fibroid is doing on a biological level. Here's the solution,
Exactly.
right? Or Obviously, I'm very excited too. Oh my God, that's amazing. You let us know what we need to do. We will have letter writing parties. Like, I'm all for it. Actually, I'm gonna put a plug right here. We want to actually have a International FemTech Day. And so they said the best way to get a day, quote unquote day, is to get somebody in politics to kind of stamp it, with approval. So we're going to help each other. We're going to write letters.
That sounds wonderful to me. We're all in. Yeah, I think we can do this. At the moment, we have, I think it's about 50 members of Congress who have co-sponsored the bill, and now we need about 200 to see it through. 200 total, so about 150 more, and we can do this.
Yeah.
This affects so many people, and the women in the military. There's a huge need there because women in the military are suffering from endometriosis and uterine fibroids. And so we need to be able to make sure that they have the support that they need.
Sometimes I say you just got to play the game so you can win the game and then like do good with it. And I hate to think that we can get this passed in the government only if we argue our military will be more effective. But at the end of the day, whatever. Like whatever they care the most about, just get it approved. That's what I tell founders when they're fundraising. They're like, but this investor only cares about this part. I'm like, whatever, take their money. Like just
One of the reasons I bring that up too is that oftentimes when I was on Capitol Hill, I had to establish some common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I was trying to advocate for uterine fibroid research and I was talking to a 20-something male staffer,
he was like,
I had to try to find some way.
Military.
So I'd be like, okay, so your boss is supporting the Defense Act, correct? And then you'd see the light bulb go on. And I'd say there are women in the middle, and they, oh, okay. And then I'd say, okay.
You a little hustler. You're a little hustler, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
You have to, Brittany.
That's it.
Yeah. So, and then some of our other two platforms are research. We actually have been published in medical journals on uterine fibroid research and have been on registry steering committees for that. And we also consult to the pharmaceutical industry, which I think your listeners might find interesting because women are finding their voices in so many different arenas. And it was really empowering for me the first time that I was at a meeting with all physicians and I learned that I had some significant information to contribute. And that never fails. And so I think oftentimes, again, we don't always know our power. And it's so important to just find your authentic voice and share it because there's so much to be gleaned there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%. Half of this podcast, I feel like, I invite other people on as the experts, and then I just talk about my own personal problems, and people love it because they're like learning and they're like, oh, and the host, she has this issue too, like, thanks for sharing.
Everyone can relate.
I wanted to ask you really quickly about, so my understanding is that pharmaceutical companies only designate about 4% of their budget for women's health R&D. Do you think that, with your like consulting with them, is that something that they want to change or that they see as a problem?
Sorry, hold on one second because the delivery's coming. I know you can hear Brody howling.
I can hear Brody. I'll just write down what time this is and we'll fix it.
Yeah. 1 second, because then as soon as my nephew gets the door, we can...
No problem.
Okay, we're good now. Sorry.
No, I understand more than most.
Question too. Okay.
Well, I feel like I ended the question at a good pause, but so I can re-say the question and then you can answer. I heard that pharmaceutical companies only designate about 4% of their R&D budget for women's health. Do you think that they're, wanting to change that or see it as an issue?
I hope they're wanting to change it. I know that I've found that since I've started advocating, there's been a huge shift in receptivity to patient input. And
Mm.
I'm super excited about that because I haven't encountered much resistance. That's my personal experience, but I also do know when I look at mammogram machines and things like that that
Mhm.
we have a long way to go.
Yes.
So I think that the networks like the one that you've created are really, really necessary
Hmm.
because women are sharing a viewpoint that previously was never shared.
Yeah.
And we do need more focus on women's health.
Hmm.
We need a women's health division in, some of the government agencies where there's one does not exist currently. And as you mentioned, um, the pharma industry needs to put more of a priority on that.
Hmm.
I think that, and I know that if men were suffering the way women suffer with fibroids and pregnancies and miscarriages and go to work, it just there would be no problem getting medication, treatment, time off. I mean,
Yeah.
there would be no questions.
Yeah.
And I listened to some of the horror stories that our members have shared, and it's mind blowing
Yeah.
what women endure, and they shouldn't have to.
No. In the beginning of the pandemic, there was like a statistic that there was more men being hospitalized for COVID-19 than women. And so a friend asked, "Oh, do you think it's like a gender thing?" And I said, "I think it's a gender thing in terms of pain resistance. Women, we could be just as sick as the man, but not go get help yet, you know?" And then like obviously it unfolded to be it's not gender specific. It was just like who could resist uncomfortability at home, you know?
Exactly. I completely agree. You know?
Well, tell me about a design patent that you have that's filed for heavy flow issues.
Yes. Well, when I started the organization, I had personally been combining sanitary products because I couldn't find one on the market that really kept me from bleeding through my clothing. So that's when I did put my architect's hat on and I designed an undergarment and I designed a sanitary napkin also. So I filed two patents, the sanitary napkin and the undergarment. The sanitary napkin, Procter and Gamble came out with the exact one 2 months after I filed the patent. And people often ask me, didn't that upset you? And I said, no, because it told me that I was on to something. So I let that, I had to kind of just let that one go because it was already made. But the undergarment, I was successful in obtaining that patent. And so today I've created a name for the company. It's Comfrey, comfortable lingerie for all women. So I combine comfortable and lingerie. And there are three areas of focus: heavy bleeding and like post maternity, everyday wear, and light incontinence. And so now we're in the sample phase of developing versions off based off that one patent. We'll probably start just with underpants first, and then bridge into bras and loungewear. So I'm curious to see what your community thinks, and I'm also would love to get any feedback on resources for samples.
Oh yeah,
That's a
definitely.
whole new world for me.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I mean, just like you can offer so many resources to our innovators that are working in the fibroid space, we have plenty of innovators. I got, one girl, she's making vagina healthy yoga pants. So, I
Love
mean,
it.
I got a lot. I
Love
have
it.
another girl making bras that respond to your hot flashes to cool you off. So, I got lots of people to hook you up with. No
That
worries,
is
of course.
awesome.
Yeah, we're so creative. We are so creative. And
Yeah.
my favorite part of the FemTech community, besides it just being like so important and so fun because it's science, like
Hmm.
the collaboration is off the charts.
Oh,
I've worked in other tech industries and the energy around how can I help you, and like how can you help me, and the lack of NDAs I've had to sign is a sign of how we know that there's a bigger purpose here.
Absolutely.
We're not competing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that collaboration. I'm so inspired by FemTech. And that's a word that didn't exist.
Yes, it's a new word, and I'm glad I think it can be improved. We've done some episodes on like, is it inclusive enough and all that stuff, but you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're doing good. And so, while we're all doing something good to further help someone else, that's all you can ask, I think.
That's it. What are some of your future goals for Fibroid Foundation?
Well, we are now at 22 chapters, and I really find that women need help where they live, and we want to be a beneficial presence on the ground. And of course, it's more difficult during the pandemic, but we are, for Fibroid Awareness Month in July, we're going to have a regional effort underway to connect women with chapter ambassadors in their cities, and to bring more chapter ambassadors on board, because we really want women to find the help that they need. Our Jamaica ambassador is just overwhelmed with inquiries. There's so much need throughout the world for support with heavy menstrual bleeding and access to care. And so this year we're really focused on that. Next month, we will be hosting the first ever patient developed scientific summit. So February 22nd and 23rd, we're having physicians who are working on cutting edge research speak to our community. And so, you talked about creativity and really trying to find ways to push the envelope. And I'm constantly brainstorming and touching base with our community to find out what they need, what they'd like to see, so that we can be that support base for them.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you're targeting women in their area, like in their community, because women in communities that don't have access, I can imagine, don't want to be told from someone who has all the access, here's your solution. They want to be told from people within their community, because usually those solutions are actually viable for them, right, to engage with. So oh wow, that's incredible that you have like all these chapters and stuff. And I mean, it's horrible that they're like overrun with inquiry, but it just proves that there's a need, proves that there's a need.
And you touched on the exact reason that we knew it was necessary to make it happen, because women could read about, the treatment options, but they couldn't get to someone to care for them. And how frustrating is that, to be suffering and to not find anyone in your community to help you? So I thought we've got to do everything we can to change that.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so exciting. I want to ask you two last questions that our listeners love. Okay. The first one is, if someone wanted to start a FemTech company, what is an area in women's health and wellness that still needs innovating?
Wow, that is a good question. Well, I did mention one earlier, mammograms, because that process is just needs some help. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, mammograms, 50-year-old technology that squeezes your boobs between cold metal plates in a cold room by yourself with your shirt off. And it's not even that good. Mammograms are just trying to take images of like shadows in your breasts. And it doesn't work for women with dense breasts, which is over 50% of women. Exactly. It's like literally garbage. It's like
so much work to be done.
So much work. Our last question is, what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Acknowledgement. I think that people are resistant to change, especially if it alters any perception of their own personal comfort. And I think that we're going to launch a men's campaign this year because we need the men's voice, as an acknowledgement that they're impacted by women's health issues. The entire family unit is impacted. We need the fellas in this, and we're all in this together. And so I think acknowledging that there's an issue that we can all collectively contribute to resolving is paramount.
Absolutely. Our tagline at FemTech Focus is women's health is everyone's health.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not well. You know what? Our family isn't well. Our babies aren't well. Our parents aren't well because we're usually the caregivers for them. Our economy isn't well. The businesses aren't well. Like literally it's everyone's health. Everything's health is women's health. So
true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right there with you.
Brittany, you're doing such great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just me and my dogs and 8 amazing team members. Just that we just love saying the word vulva and fighting for women's healthcare. I cannot wait to work with you on getting Congress to care more. I'm all about that. Let's do it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much for your time today and all that you do for women.
Thank you. It has been my absolute pleasure, and keep doing what you're doing.